advising private and public companies involved in technology services, defense, and energy manufacturing. And our next panelist is Ronke. She's a public health professional with a master's in health policy, and she also serves on the Ignite NextGen Leaders. She coordinates anchor groups as well. She is also a member of the Perfected Praise Choir at Ignite. And our third speaker will be Feyisola. She's an IT project manager. She was just here, as well as the owner of State Asks Events, a wedding planning company based here in the DC area. She is also a public speaker and has spoken at numerous wedding conferences, as well as Fox 5 DC. She is also a Ignite NextGen leader and a leader of both the marketing and singles ministry. Right, so please join us in welcoming the next the panel for the finance. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So we have one more mantra. So let us all read it together. So I believe that God has given me the power to make wealth. It is my responsibility to exercise that power daily to make and keep wealth. I believe that by being a good steward of the wealth that I already have can lead to wealth little by little. I will not remain a slave to debt. I also believe that my gift will make room for me in due time. I will commit myself to discovering and developing my gifts until they bring me before great men and great opportunities to make greater wealth. I will start this process of self-discovery and proper stewardship over money so that it can reap greater benefits after I am married. I will not wait to get started. God has given me everything that I need to get started today. I will commit myself to follow his leading, self-discovery, and gaining knowledge. All right. Sounds good. All right, so let's dive into some questions. So let's see. The first one that we have here. We all set? Okay, cool. You want to switch seats? Sounds good. All right. So the first one we have here is, so what common areas do millennials tend to overspend? And what are some lifestyle changes that you think would help with this overspending?
Good. First, nice to be here. I know it's been a long day, but it's a lot of good information that you guys have been exposed to. So, from my view, and I'm not quite a millennial, but I can tell you that number one on my list will be housing, and before you say, hey, I don't own a property yet, check out how much you're paying in rent. And the reason why I say that is renting shouldn't be a long-term strategy. So for millennials, the statistics, the survey is showing that most millennials are delaying home ownership or not even thinking about it at all. But the mistake is that the rent is totally, out of the ballpark when you consider the amount that people are actually spending. Obviously, the quality of housing these days has gone up a lot. A lot of new buildings, service buildings are pretty pricey. So you want to be sure that you're not going to be a renter for too long. That's one. I mean, there's a lot more that I have. I guess eating out, restaurants, eating out, and trying to keep up with friends will be the next one.
Yes, thank you so much, Hola. I would definitely say eating out is a big one for myself. Oh my goodness, man. It's definitely a big one. So thank you for mentioning that. So.
I think I would take a different perspective than that. I do think because of how the economy is, millennials do spend a lot on housing, we spend a lot on school. The cost of school has gone up drastically. But I would say that for me, the way I interpret that question is, what are we overspending on that's not necessarily a necessity? And that would be lifestyle. I think a lot of people, they want to live a certain way, even though they can't afford it. And so they are breaking their back to basically afford a certain type of lifestyle, to look a certain type of way. And I think because of social media, because of, just the desire to have it all together, look all together, whatever it might be, people are spending a lot more on lifestyle than they really should be. So I would say that's what I would say we're overspending on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would say similarly, for myself, I think something else we struggle with as millennials is busyness. We've already been dubbed the burnout generation, which is interesting and probably a whole nother conversation. But I would say for myself, I am definitely guilty of eating out. And I don't eat McDonald's, so when I eat out, it's expensive. It's usually a $15 meal at least. So, and that's something and I've found that the times that happens is when I haven't slowed down to plan when I'm gonna cook into my schedule. And that's what I'm guilty of, right? I've planned ahead for everything else. I've planned ahead for everything I need to do for my job, my business, Ignite, who I need to see, or I need to visit this person, but I never stop to say, when am I gonna cook? And so because of that, you're buying $15 meals multiple times a day, right? So I think sometimes we're so busy, we're moving so fast that we haven't slowed down for that. And I think that's something that I am occasionally still guilty of working on. And I think that's definitely a big category.
All right, thank you so much for those responses. Let's see. So we have another question here would be, so what advice do you have for someone who is looking to increase their income?
Find a job. No, and I mean, it sounds funny, but realistically, I watch a lot of videos like The Financial Diet, 2 Cents, all these things, and a lot of people will always talk about, these are the 5 hacks of how I saved 6 figures in 1 year. The biggest factor that they have in their favor is that they were probably already making close to 6 figures. You can't save 6 figures if you're making 40K. That's not gonna happen in 1 year. If you're truly making 40K, there's no way. So for me, I honestly think that sometimes that just might mean that you need to find another job. Maybe you really like your job and you like what you're doing. I'm sure there's probably another company somewhere else that is willing to pay you more. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not loyal to any company. I hope my work people ain't watching, I'm leaving anyways, but I'm not really loyal to any company because they're not loyal to you. They will let you go in a heartbeat. And I'm not saying this to say that we shouldn't take our work seriously, but in the Bible it says that when you are diligent, you will stand before kings. You won't stand before mere men. So if you're standing before kings, you have the ability to have access to those riches, if that makes sense. You can't continue to say, well, I like this job and I don't want to seem too ambitious, so I'm gonna stay at this job that's paying me less than what I'm supposed to be earning. You better go out there, dust off your resume, start doing some interview prep, and find a job. Find a job that is going to pay you what you want to earn, that is going to give you the type of life balance that you need. Because, there are some people that maybe you are living above your means, but there are some people that just have serious expenses that are coming up. Maybe you're taking care of family. Maybe you're the one that's, taking care of the things in your household. Find a job that's going to pay you what you're willing to earn. And if you can't find a job, make something. There are people who are entrepreneurs. Talk to them. Find out how they're doing what they're doing and figure out how you can do something for yourself as well.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think I do own a wedding planning company, but there was a point where I realized I was going to go back into the workforce and start working, right? I think a lot of times we have to be guided by our goals. Ronke said, being stuck in a job that's paying you less than what you want to make. First, you have to have a vision for how much you think you should be making based off of your skills, right? And I'm sure everyone will just say $1 million, which, one day, of course, we can all get there. But being realistic about, this is what I think I should be making. This is what it costs to live in DC. It costs me at least $80K a year. I need to figure out how I'm going to get there. Once you map out that vision and figure, then that guides the rest of your steps, right? So I would say for me, the reason I chose to go back to working is because I have a background in engineering, and that pays a certain amount. And I had a vision for owning a home, and I had a vision for certain things, and not paying the minimum every month on my mortgage. That vision drove everything else that I was gonna do. And as I'm doing that, I continue to build the business. I don't treat it as a side hustle. I don't even like that phrase. It is a business, and I charge for it as a business. I treat it as a business. I put effort into it like a business. But at the same time, sometimes you just have to understand that there are certain, sometimes there are certain industries that just, that pay a certain way, right? Most of the time, there's a limit to what, certain certain businesses are going to make, especially after certain years in business, and there are just many different factors. So you have to be realistic and take a step back and figure that out. I would say for me, a big part of that is focusing on my vision and not what people are saying on Instagram, right? Like, I don't know, every single time I open Instagram, I see people saying, oh, let me teach you how to quit your job. And it's like, when did a job become this evil thing? Like, I don't really understand. It's like, let me teach you how to quit your job. Let me teach you how to quit your job. I will go back to being a full-time entrepreneur, I know that. But even in saying that, there's nothing evil or bad about having a job. In fact, you can learn a lot from working in a corporate setting if your eyes are open, if you're not seeing it as an evil place, right? So I think that a lot of it is really coming up with that plan for yourself and for your life, being realistic about what you need to make, and then working backwards, looking at your skills, what's in your hands to accomplish that. In the Bible, when Moses was given a task, God said, gave it back to him, what's in your hand? The woman who was a widow, he gave it back to him, said, what's in your hand? And the staff that was in Moses' hand was what was used to do all the miracles, right? The woman who had nothing left but a jar of oil, the prophet didn't even say, oh, let me just wave my hand and give you something. He said, what do you have? And that oil that she had was what ended up making more. So we have to look within ourselves and be realistic about what we have. And that may be something that leads to another job. It may be something that, either in your industry or in another industry, we just have to look inward and not focus on what other people think about what we're doing.
Well said. I just want to emphasize, working in an area that you're passionate is very key. While the question is talking about how to increase your income, I think it's easier to increase your income, in a field or in an area where you're really passionate about. And then, before you leave one job, figure out how you're going to add value. So you should be, first, are you getting any calls? Is anybody calling you where you are right now, trying to poach you away from there? If that's not happening, that may be an indication that you need to improve your skills, right? Improve your skills, put yourself out there, branding, network. People in your field, do they know you? Are you an authority in your field? Do you attend conferences? Do you know people outside of your company? If you're a consultant, will your clients literally beg you to leave that consulting firm to come work for them? So, before you think about increasing income, think about adding value. How are you adding value where you are? And if you add so much value where you are, you may have read Linchpin or heard about Linchpin's, the work that the writing and the recommendation. Make yourself so valuable that literally you're getting offers without even asking. That happens, and I'm sure you may know people that has happened to. That's when you know that you're really ready to go out there.
Nice. So, thank you for those great answers. Okay. Let's see, what is the next question on here? This is a good one this one's about saving. So although saving is great, being that we're all still in our mid to late 20s, we're fairly young, so we want to enjoy life.
30s and 40s. Don't leave us out.
I apologize for that. But, on the topic of saving, so where do you find the balance between enjoying life but still, kind of planning for that what if, that oops situation,
Yeah. I'll respond first, and I just want to talk about financial peace real quick. Financial peace is a personal finance class. It's a 9 weeks personal finance class, that is organized in several places. It's a Dave Ramsey product. It teaches you about personal finance. One of the key things there is about budgeting, right? So back to this question, you can have fun while you're still saving and doing the right things with your finances. The key there is being disciplined, right? And when people hear about personal finance or when we hear about budgeting, the first thought is, oh, I won't be able to do anything, I won't be able to have fun. But that's wrong. I mean, obviously, if you're in debt, if you have a lot of school loans, you need to figure out, have a plan, a debt retirement plan, have a plan of how you're going to pay off your debt. The faster you do that, and that may involve some sacrificing, maybe cutting some life standard of living expenses, in the interim, right, for a short period of time while you pay off the debt. And after you pay off your debt, I mean, you can, leave and give and, have fun. But even while you're paying off debt, you should have a line item for fun in your budget, right? It may not be a big, it may not be traveling to Cancun for vacation, but at least there should be, a line item in your budget for fun.
Okay. Great answer. Thank you so much.
So I budget, but I have a huge line item for travel. So I feel like that last comment was just at me. But I think that, I definitely agree with everything you said. Discipline is important, but I think also one of the things that we are fortunate enough as millennials to have, and I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I'm just gonna say it, reward cards. I strongly believe in sending my money on an errand. And for me, how I send my money on an errand is I'm buying gas, I use my credit card, I got some points on that. I'm buying groceries, I use my credit card, I got some points on that. By the end of the year, I can put all those points together and take me a nice little trip to Europe and go away for 2 weeks, and I didn't pay a dime. I feel that we need to be more wise about how we use our money. We need to be wise about the things that we're spending on. I know of a couple where the wife will buy like $20 pair of shoes and the husband will buy like $400 pair of shoes. Now his shoes will last a lot longer than her shoes, right? But maybe for her she's fine with it because that's what her priority is. So I think a lot of it is discipline, but also what are your priorities? For you, maybe your big line item might not necessarily be what everyone deems as fun, like travel. Maybe for you, your big line item is taking certifications, and maybe you want to splurge on that. I think it's important to figure out what your priorities are, but to also figure out how your money can work for you. If you have good credit, and you know that you're disciplined, and you know that you will not max out your credit card, I don't think something like a rewards card is a bad idea. But once again, be responsible.
No, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I think I agree. You do have to do what works for you. I think no matter what, you can't take possessions to the grave. So there always has to be balance. There's, I know this is super extreme, but I don't know if anyone's seen like these extreme TV shows about people who like reuse paper towels and like do all these things, or like it's like at a certain point, there's a threshold, right, to saving, and we have to live this life. God wants us to have joy, right? But at the same time, like you don't want to be reckless with what you have. So I just wanted to echo that. I 100% agree with the question and the answer everybody else has given. There is a way to strike a balance. You just have to be wise.
Great, thank you for the answers. Let's see here. So back to the topic of renting, right? So do you think that in the case of renting, is it always throwing money away? Or is there a time when renting is actually better than buying a home? Because I feel as though people do forget the cost of maintenance, right? And that's sort of something that can hit you really, really hard when things just start falling apart at once. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So first, total cost of ownership is a big thing that people ignore. Owning a home is not just being able to go to closing or getting the least expensive mortgage that you can. There's a lot of responsibilities that come with it. But the question, to answer the question, it's a case-by-case basis. Some people, renting is what they need to be doing. But again, renting should not be a long-term strategy, right? Because homeownership is, while the house may be a liability in the short term, while you're paying up the mortgage and all of that, but long-term, think about, the tax benefits, even though that is reduced recently. But think about the tax benefits, the equity, that you could build, from owning a home, But the issue here, I think it's really, are you ready, right? Are you ready to own? It's easier to rent. Owning takes a lot more. So, and through the FPU class, the recommendation obviously is that you don't buy a home while you're still in debt. And the reason is because while you're paying off your debt, you have less disposable income. If you struggle and buy a house, if you need to fix things, or you have, temporary setback in your income or reduction in income, or a period of time where you're in between jobs, what is going to happen? So through the FPU program, my recommendation is you pay off debt, you save for down payment, have an emergency fund in place, and then you buy. And then when you buy, there's certain criteria that we recommend. So you want to make sure that your mortgage is somewhere around 25% of your take-home pay. That way you have space to save, to have fun, to take care of other things, to give, to pay your tithe. And this is the other thing. When you budget, your tithe should show up in there, right? If you plan to give, it makes it easier for you to give. And think about what we're talking about. All of the resources in our hands or that flows through us, is a gift from God. And we need to be good stewards of it, right? So before we, get too carried away in figuring out how to increase our pleasure, let's think about what God wants us to do with the resources He's put in our hands.
Thank you so much for the answer. And I would definitely agree that, the whole idea of planning in advance, it makes it so much easier to steward your money, so that you're not stuck in those situations where, you're being irresponsible. So thanks a lot. Is there any...
Yeah, I definitely wanted to say I agree 100%. I also took Financial Peace University a few months, maybe 6 months or a year before I bought my first home. And I would say it was very helpful. I was also raised by an accountant, so I've learned, I learned some of those fundamentals, but being in the course helped me a lot. And I think that there were a lot of things that I knew, but I wasn't putting into practice. The biggest was building a budget. So after I built the budget and I really learned how to really stick to a budget and be more disciplined about my budget, which was different from being frugal, because I was always frugal, but I didn't really have a budget. I wasn't necessarily sending my money on an errand. Once I got to that place, I built the confidence to be like, I'm ready to buy a home. Because I knew okay, I can set, I know I'm setting this much aside, I practiced basically setting aside a mortgage, I was able to, it gave me structure that gave me confidence to step into it confidently and say I'm ready to buy a home. That said, I would say I do agree that it's not always time, that it's not always throwing away money to rent, right? When I first moved to the DMV, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to live. I didn't know if I wanted to live in Montgomery County, PG, if I wanted to live in Baltimore. I mean, there's just so much at play. And again, a house is a responsibility. Once you can't move the house after you buy it. So, if you're in a new place, it's good to learn the space first. It's good to understand budgeting your money. And then, truthfully, you do have to get used to having that emergency fund, which is why I think that's a step before you buy the house. I bought a house that was relatively newish. It was about 13 years old. But then there were things, I moved in, the walls were a very weird yellow color, which I could not stand. So I had to spend money to fix that. There were certain floors that were weird. There was money that had to be spent above the mortgage. One day I came home and I was like, wow, my house is a little colder than usual. Oh, the furnace is broken. Great, right? Had to pay for that. Thankfully, I got it fixed and not replaced. But these things happen when you own a house, right? When you rent, you just call the leasing office and you say, can someone come and fix it? When you own, you're the leasing office. So you have to get used to having money set aside. You have to get used to budgeting a certain way before owning a home. But I will say that owning that home has been a blessing. The value has gone up, and I've only had it 2.5 years. It's gone up a lot. It's given me a lot of stability, structure. I even have a home office in it that's beautiful. There are many blessings that come with it, so I don't want it to sound like it's just a burden, but it's also important to know you have to prepare. Like P. Wall said earlier, preparation trumps commitment, and that's not only relationships, it's also with your assets. So you definitely want to be prepared before you take on those kinds of assets.
All right, thank you so much for those answers. So moving on to the next question. This one has to do with school. So do you think that, is graduate school a good route to consider for raising your earning potential, or do you think that it's more of a liability?
I think it depends. It's not every industry that you need to go to graduate school for, but I think it depends. So I'll give my experience. I went to school out of state, and I got student loans for that. And I knew that I wanted to go to get my master's in public health. My dad wanted me to come back to the area, so I applied to 3 schools in the area. I applied to Hopkins, GW, and Maryland. Maryland was a lot cheaper than the other schools, but I didn't really want to go to Maryland because for me, I was thinking about the, if I call it investment potential, right? I'm studying health policy. When you think policy, you think DC. So because of that, I went to GW. And GW is stupid expensive.
Super expensive.
Very, very expensive. Oh, hey y'all, GW, hello.
Very
But GW is
expensive.
extremely expensive. No. Go Hokies, but yeah. But so for me, I will be honest, I think for a while it has taken time for it to actually realize, the potential to actually realize. My first job out of undergrad wasn't really, it was a consulting firm, but it wasn't really a top consulting firm, and it was just, it was a job that I was just going to, and it was stressful, so I eventually ended up switching to another job, and I'm now in the process of actually switching to another job, but I think part of what has helped me with my job so far is having gone to GW. I think there are times where, yes, you can go to your old university down the road and it'll open doors for you, but I'm a strong believer in leveraging the name and the brand of what you carry. I strongly believe that if I had gone to Maryland, yes, maybe where I'm heading to next, I might still have gotten an offer from there, but it might not have been it might not have been now, if that makes sense. Because to me, I do think that, everything, brands for a reason. Nike is Nike for a reason. You're not gonna go to Payless and buy Airwalk and expect it to do the same quality of work as a Nike pair of shoes. So for me, I do think that in some instances, it is worthwhile to invest in graduate school. However, just try to be as creative as possible to fund it. If you can do a graduate assistantship, do that. If you can pay off your loans or pay off whatever it is while you're in school, please do that. But just make sure that you sit down first and truly count the cost. Don't just go to graduate school because this field is getting saturated and I need a graduate degree. You need to figure out why you want the graduate degree and what you are going to do with that graduate degree, because it does you no good to get a graduate degree, be X amount of thousands in the hole, and then you can't even get you a good job to help you pay it off.
Yeah.
Like, you just set yourself up.
Yeah. I think you need to think about the return on investment. School, it's a lot of money. So think about the return on investment. And it's, again, case-by-case basis. Your industry, your particular, where you are, in your career. Coming out of undergrad, you want to at least work for a couple of years. Well, again, depending on the industry. For some industries, a graduate degree is needed right away. But, for most in the business field, nobody really cares, except if you're in investment banking and you really have to be with the top firms. So if you're going to go spend that money, you better be going to a top-tier school where you're sure that you end up on Wall Street or somewhere. But the way I did it, first I worked throughout my undergrad, so no undergrad loans because I worked the entire time. And then for grad school, my company paid because I was working and going to school part-time, and I paid 100%. I think that's the best case scenario because you're learning, you're applying whatever you're learning, on the job. It helps you move faster on the job. So let's step back and talk about personal finance. And I've mentioned Financial Peace University. These are some of the things that we talk about in the class. Personal finance is 80% behavior change and 20% head knowledge. If your mindset is, I'm going to get a loan, you've not even finished paying your undergrad loan, and you're talking about grad school, it makes no sense. So, first you think, when you challenge yourself, when you challenge your thinking, you come up with better solutions. Debt, leverage, whether for education, business, or anything else, is the easiest way to go. But there are other ways. People are doing things, getting that same result without going into debt. So when you challenge yourself, it may mean leaving the company you're in right now if they don't pay for it, to go to another firm, maybe a slight pay cut, but then you get, education money to be able to pay for school. The value in paying six figures for grad school right now, I think it's really low.
I agree. Feyi, do you have anything to add?
I'll just say, I would echo what Ronke said. Not every field necessarily requires it. I studied computer engineering. getting a master's in that doesn't necessarily help. So I think also sometimes being wise. I know many of us in here who are African, our parents are like, okay, when are you getting your master's? Like on the day you graduate from your bachelor's, they're like, okay, when are you getting your master's? Which is great for clout, but it may not always necessarily help your pockets. So, again, I researched it and I realized getting a master's on top of a bachelor's in my own field would not help me, so I chose not to go that route. So I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but I do have just a bachelor's, and I'm okay with that.
I guess the other thing to think about is certifications. You can use certifications to get to the same place. In the IT field, it's no big deal. Certifications are more valuable than grad school. And in a lot of fields too, you could find a certification that would improve your resume. So, before you think about the expense of grad school, look for all the other options where you don't have to go into debt.
And again, research, because in public, I have a lot of friends. I don't know why I'm surrounded by so many people in public health, but that master's matters.
Yeah.
That MPH matters. So again, it's a matter of research and understanding your field. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much for those answers. We're going to move on to our last question, and then give it to the audience for remaining questions. So the last one would be, what are 3 pieces of actionable advice centered around career growth and finances that you will leave with us?
The first one I would give is all about adding value, which I know Brother Falari already mentioned, but it's incredibly important. When you're adding value in a place, a lot of times they don't want to let you go. I mentioned something, personal about my life to my manager at work recently, and he was like, "Oh, well, do you just need to work from home? We can modify your whole work schedule. I just don't want you to leave." There are just certain, and I didn't even ask for it. I was kind of like, I wasn't even going there with it, but it's just when you are adding value, you find, it is easier to find the type of money that you're trying to make. Where I work right now, yeah, there are just so many testimonies around that. I could tell you later if you're interested to hear, but adding value is the key. The way that you're able to help people solve problems. That's another way of defining adding value, like being able to solve problems, not just always identify them, but also coming up with suggestions on how to solve them. That's what adding value is, whether it's in a business or at work. The second thing I was going to say, it's pretty simple, but keep a budget. Like I said, I was raised by an accountant. He started talking to us about credit scores when I was 10.
Wow.
I was like, I'm just trying to get to soccer practice. Like, why? I don't understand. I don't want to hear this. But there are certain things that I've learned since I was young. But there are certain things in my life that didn't change until I started to keep a budget. And I use Every Dollar, which is the app which is recommended by Financial Peace University. It is free.
Yeah.
It's called Every Dollar. I use the free version. There is a paid version as well.
Yeah.
I use that to keep a budget. It really helps to see at the beginning of the month what you're going to be spending money on before you start.
Yeah.
I think that is critical. And the third thing I would say is just do your research. And I think we've talked about many reasons to do research before you jump into anything. Before you click on that ad that says all you got to do is invest $5,000 into this program that's going to teach you how to become a millionaire, do research, before you toss that money away, into that promise. So there's just many reasons to do research. Those would be my 3.
I'm just going to stick with 2. The first one I would say is put God first. And the reason why I say that is because I know we've talked about different things up here. We've talked about, the importance of buying a home. We've talked about, maybe getting your master's if it's in a field where you need to have it. But I would just say put God first. Pray about everything, every single decision that you're going to make, especially when it comes to finances. Make sure you pray about it, because there are people that lose their jobs and they are leading choirs. It's not that they aren't in God's house. It's not that they're not doing what they should be, but things happen. And I feel that as believers, we have the ear of God. We're able to hear from God. God can probably maybe give you a sign that something is about to come. So you know what? I want you to save a little bit. Instead of taking that girl's trip that you've been waiting all year for, save a little bit, because something is going to happen that might take you through a little bit of a rough season. So I would say put God first. And put God first also in the way that you spend your money. So like we've mentioned with budgeting, make sure that your tithes is part of it. Yeah. Make sure that if God tells you, like, I want you to give money towards that thing or give money towards that person, be willing to do it, especially if you truly, as a Christian, believe that God is your source, right? Because if you listen to God, you do what God tells you, you're not going to be looking stupid in the end, right? I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed beg for bread. So that would be my first.
Yeah.
My second thing I would say, I agree with adding value, but I also think it's also important to know your worth. There are some places that some of y'all will work in, I've worked in some places as well, that will not, they know you're adding value, but it's not going to be until you're ready to walk out that they're going to be ready to admit that you've added value. So don't hold yourself in somewhere because I love this job and I'm, really trying to add value and whatever it is. Also know your worth in every area of life, financially, relationship. Know your worth. Don't let anybody play you. Don't let anybody make you feel like you're less than what you are. You're a child of God. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You have a good head on your shoulders. God is going to give you inspiration. So know your worth and always ask God for, wisdom in terms of like next steps, but also ask God for the creativity and the inspiration that's needed to be able to convey your worth, because that's another thing. You know your worth. How do you tell somebody else how much you're worth? So make sure that you know your worth and that you know how to tell people, I'm worth 6 figures, don't pay me 40K. You need to know how to do that. And I think that does tie back to the first point, but I would say those are just my 2 things. Keep God first and know your worth.
Good. I would say set goals, smart goals, review them every day. A lot of us set goals at the beginning of the year and don't go back to them. Literally, when I say every day, I mean every day. Like in the morning, when you wake up, have your quiet time, next thing, take a look at your goals, every day. So the more you look at them, the more, they become ingrained on your mind. It gives you the ability, obviously with the help of the Holy Spirit, gives you that confidence that you can achieve it, right? And as when you look at your goals every day, it helps you control how you spend your time, right? For the day, it helps you prioritize, it helps you cut out, activities that are not adding value to you. Second thing I would say is, increase your financial intelligence and your financial IQ. The more you know, if you're in a job, you should. Certain things are no-brainers, right? But let's just mention it since we haven't talked about it this evening. Retirement planning, 401k, retirement planning, the things at your job. A lot of companies, even the federal government, would match, what you put in your retirement account. Take advantage of all those things. Free money, take advantage of them. I mean, I've run into people that are not doing anything. And, the earlier you start, the better. You guys have the advantage of age right now. You get to middle age and you should talk to some people. People are stressed out because they did not start early. The earlier you start, you enjoy the benefit of compound interest, right? So the earlier you start, the more your money grows over time. And there's a lot of, ideas and philosophies out there. Some people say, do real estate investing, don't do 401k, the stock market might crash, or this or that. So I've lived through a couple of cycles. I've seen recessions. We had a major recession in 07 to 09. Real estate values went down. The stock market went down as well. Guess who lost money? The people that cashed out. Talking about 401ks, right? Some people panicked and cashed out. So they bought high and sold low. They just lost. So when things are going, up and down, just stay calm. It's a long-term thing. Have retirement planning in place. There's a lot to say, but I'll leave you with this. Have mentors. Have mentors in church. Spiritual leaders have mentors on the job. If you're in business, have mentors. If you're an entrepreneur, have mentors. Have multiple mentors, right? Have somebody you can go to, somebody that can coach you, somebody that has more experience, that can see ahead, that can connect you with the right people. It's very key. Before you make the mistakes, a lot of us make the mistakes and then find out that, Ronke could have literally, sorted me out here. So talk to people, have mentors. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those responses. All right, so we're running low on time, so I think we can have a few questions, if that's okay. Yes, is there a mic to give to her?
Hi. So at one point, I actually had a goal to purchase houses in low-income neighborhoods, in Baltimore, and much flip them and then have tenants move in, because I know that that would be, you know, a good way of having additional income. And I do also realize that I do have some friends that, you know, work in DC, and that's some of the things